And we're live. Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin, joined this lovely Tuesday afternoon. I had to look outside to see how lovely it was. Is it nicer out there than it is over here? It's not bad. It's a little cloudy. Not too bad here.
Yeah, no, it's I don't know, 74 or 75 today. It's not too
Oh
bad.
my God, I hate you. It's like 95 outside right now.
I have to turn my fans off for this podcast, so I'm really going to be suffering in it.
That is Harrison
That
Fagan.
sound your fellow listener just heard was someone ahead of you on the freeway crashing their car in fury at hearing that. They just got to the segment in the podcast a little bit before you.
Yeah, that's Harrison. He is of Silver Screen and Roll and of SB Nation. I am of this here channel, which I hope you're subscribed to, whether it's on YouTube or anywhere that you get your podcast from. Today on the show, we are going to be talking about Winning Time. I was really kind of surprised because on Monday's Lowdown, I talked about Winning Time and its cancellation, some thoughts on this season compared to the first season, some thoughts on, the macro entertainment industry at large and the role that it played in the show's cancellation. So I was, and Harrison and I think are somewhat disagreement on the show and all of that. We both agree that it's a bummer that it's canceled. Don't get me wrong, but I think we are in somewhat disagreement on the second season of the show. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about is Jared Vanderbilt. He got his 4-year extension, 4 years, $48 million extension for Jared Vanderbilt. Again, this is one of those spots where I was kind of surprised at the response to my tweet about it, where I said I thought it was a slight overpay for somebody I'm not positive I can find minutes for in the rotation. Folks ran with that, and we're not thrilled with that. And then I have a misfortune of the week having to do with water drinking, which apparently at my age is a dangerous endeavor. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. I'm actually, no, I'm not doing good. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm upset, and it's because cancel culture is out of control. They got this show. I finally see why people are complaining about this and like how it's a problem, because they canceled my favorite TV show. And
Yeah.
It was my favorite currently, probably.
I mean, if we're being honest, Jerry Buss would have been canceled a few times over if he existed like 30 years later.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was almost like a little like, do we need to cancel him? Like when the first season of Winning Time came out, and it's just like, he's dead. It's fine. Like,
Yeah, I don't think his dating tendencies would have gone very well in this era. In
2023, probably not. No.
Although you didn't really see any of that in the second season. It was just like he was a saint in the second season. He was the one getting cheated on, apparently, which...
Yeah, I mean, they sort of implied that she thought he was cheating, but they didn't really actually go to, like, he is cheating. Like, that was never seen on script. When, like, he 1,000% was at the time, or I don't know. No, yeah, he's dead. I can say whatever I want. So, I can't get sued.
It's written about. Like, it's not, this isn't some state secret that we're talking about here. And that actually is a pretty good amalgamation for my issues, which are pretty well covered on this channel, but I'll kind of go over them again. The second season of HBO's Winning Time removed the HBO aspect of it. Like the sex, drugs, alcohol, like all of that stuff was just removed from the show.
It was on a platform called Max. Okay, it's not on HBO. It's just on Max.
I guess that's true. I mean, the opening of the show was still the
removed
HBO,
the HBO.
Like,
yeah.
I guess that's true. Yeah. Hilariously, today I got an email from HBO saying that they removed the Lakers TV show, but they are bringing the Lakers on TNT. The TNT games are going to be streaming on HBO Max. And yeah, so I was listening to Andy Greenwald and Chris Ryan have a show called The Watch for The Ringer. And they have covered this season of Winning Time, and we're specifically talking about its cancellation here. And they do a very good job. Obviously, those guys know endlessly more about the show business than than I do, but they did a very good job, I thought, of staying balanced and still pointing out their issues with the show. And they finally got around to, hey, it's a little weird that all of a sudden Jeannie Buss was super complimentary of a show that every single Showtime Laker hated last year. And oh, by the way, Jay Moore appears in one of the episodes of this. And as that is
like
all
a fairly minor role. There's no way he got a giant paycheck for this, right? Like,
no, I mean, any paycheck though is more than he's received for acting recently, though. So, yeah, I was, and as all of this is going on, I've noticed and pointed out several times over this season that, again, one of the most promiscuous sporting teams in American professional sports history, they had an actual scene here where they're sitting there in the Forum Club sipping on sodas while Norm Nixon dances with his future wife, and they're like, I can't believe he's partying. And I was like, hold on, what? What are we doing here? This is not how that went.
Supposed to be sodas? I just assumed that was alcoholic drinks, but I guess I wasn't looking that closely.
I mean, they looked more like sodas than alcoholic drinks, because like the thing with an alcoholic drink is it's not the same color as the soda. Depending on
Anthony,
the pour.
They're drinking on set. They have to do like 100 takes. They probably were drinking soda.
Well, I'm just saying that, like, they looked more like sodas than they looked like alcoholic drinks, or like more like sodas are portrayed in, because like nowadays with alcohol culture as it is in our society, most people just drink alcohol straight up. Like, there aren't any cocktails being drank. Like, you look at Suits, they're like drinking in the office.
Have you paid for a cocktail recently?
What's that?
Have you paid for a cocktail recently? They're expensive.
I guess that's true. Yeah, I actually haven't paid for a cocktail in quite some time. I don't drink hard alcohol when I'm out. But yeah, it was super weird to see. And again, these are things that would draw an audience to a show, right? Sex sells. The nitty-gritty details of one of the most popular teams in American sports history would have sold pretty well. And considering the ratings, we're finding out in email or in interviews done after the fact from showrunners and stuff that basically HBO didn't like where the ratings were at in the first season and basically just trusted them to improve those ratings in the second, and figured
Which,
that
to be fair, is often how successful TV shows go. Like, you're going to start objectively, if you have a really successful TV show, usually you're going to start with lower ratings, and then word of mouth is going to raise it up.
Yeah.
Like, that's not an unreasonable guess.
And what was weird to me though is that, like, if you're hoping to improve those ratings, I would probably do more of what was successful in the first season, and I just didn't think we got very much of it. But you have a theory on why the second season felt more watered down than the first, having to do with the actual, having to do in your and my conversation, having to do with the actual like source material.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I will say that, like, I think before we get into, what did and didn't work about the show, or any complaints that we did or didn't have with it, because I enjoyed season 2 a lot. I didn't enjoy it as much as season 1. I think that part of that was because what I'll get into, like, I think the season 2 source material was like a little bit less interesting than the season 1. I mean, objectively, you're not going to get a more interesting like TV season, like NBA season as a TV show.
A cocaine-addled player putting out a hit on his head coach?
Exactly. Like, and also the head coach that was only there because the previous head coach was hit by a car in the middle of the season, and he had to take over, leading to a guy being pulled in from the broadcast booth to become his assistant coach in the middle of the year. Like, there were interesting plot beats in the second season. I thought one of the highlights was when they basically recreated that very real press conference almost verbatim, because
it's such a great artistic choice.
Yeah, incredible, because, it is, so there were moments like that where of just absolute chaos where you are getting to see it, but there was, it wasn't quite as hectic as that first, Magic rookie year. And, they sort of condensed a little bit of the team ownership stuff in at the beginning on, like, sort of some event, like Jerry Buss didn't really draft Magic Johnson, like that was Jack Kent Cooke and all that stuff. But for story's sake, they sort of condensed all that in there and, started their bond there and all of that stuff. And so, but like, I think that more than anything, the reason that this show show, did not do better in its second season than it did in its first was, it seemed like there was almost no marketing for it, which, is certainly going to hurt things. Maybe there was some and I'm just not aware of it, and there was more than I'm realizing. But
it was tied to the strike.
Yeah, I felt like we were inundated with trailers and ads and all this stuff, the last time that this show was coming out. And I just did not feel like I saw as much of that. I only found out that it was, still coming out again when we got like an email from HBO about like, hey, here's when screeners start to drop and all of that stuff. Yeah. I didn't know what the release date was. And so if someone who pays a lot of attention to this, did not necessarily know that without, it sort of being thrown at me, I don't expect the general audience member to. I think that some of the reason that it was harmed was probably, like you mentioned, the actors and writers strike, which, I stand in solidarity with them, but you're going to naturally get less news coverage when there's not people giving interviews about the show and stuff. Like, how many articles were there last year about the cast basically going back and forth with the subjects, And I think the subjects, number one, realize that, hey, like, people are tuning into this because we keep giving this show free advertising by like saying that we're going to sue them all the way to the Supreme Court, and
again, which is something the Jerry West character would actually do in the show.
100%. That is unfortunately, I'm so sad that we will not get to see that plot line in Winning Time season 37 when Jerry West, upset about Winning Time being made, is suing HBO all the way to the Supreme Court about, like, I just wanted this thing to keep going. And it's not going to now. So I think there was a little bit of that. You didn't see Kareem and Magic and all these guys coming out and giving multiple interviews about how mad they were and how you really shouldn't watch the show and all this sex and cool stuff that it's showing that they're doing. You don't want to see that, do you? You just want to see, like, Magic Johnson smiling, all this Family Man. And then people are like, wait, what do you not want us to see? And so I think there was a little bit of that too. And, I think overall, there were probably some fans that did listen to that and were like, oh, Jerry West or Magic Johnson or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar are mad about this, I'm not watching it. And so I think there was probably, and when you have Jeannie Buss herself out there in the first, if you want to watch the real story of the LA Lakers, like, you got to watch this documentary that we made on Hulu.
Yeah. All right. So a lot to hit on.
I know
there.
I just threw a lot, but there's, I think, a lot of things, as much as we're going to dive into what we did and didn't like about the show, I think there are a lot of things that, contributed to this that are beyond the showrunners and actors and all of them, their control.
Yeah.
Writers.
So the last time you and I talked about something that wasn't basketball was on this feed, right? We talked about Star Wars and some of the issues and Disney entities just kind of struggling in this era, and IP driven content, and how we're just kind of stuck with nothing but IP driven content, right? And I really, you look at all the projects that get a runway, and you have to be like incredibly special to get a runway if you aren't IP driven, right? Like The Bear comes to mind for FX, where The Bear, they essentially they were given like a few months to throw this season one together, and somehow we're like miraculously able to not just pull it off, but do so incredibly well. And you would think that after that first season, and given the amount of fan interest and critical acclaim, that FX would have been like, okay, you guys can have a little bit more space. You guys can, go. You can really dive into some of the stuff. And they're like, no, you get like an extra month. Congratulations, you get an extra month, and you have to throw it together all over again for season 2. And again, miraculously, not only did they execute it, but they executed it even better, I thought, in season 2 than they did in season 1. And with this show, I think it ran up against, like, I kind of theorized that if this came together 5-10 years ago, I think we're probably in season 7 right now, getting ready to like enjoy the three-peat era, the retelling of the three-peat era, because there was just more support for these kinds of projects. Yes, It is technically Lakers IP. It is technically brand driven in that there's a built-in fan base, a built-in and ravenous fan base with the Lakers that would check this show out. But like you're talking about, Harrison, even setting aside the commercial support and trailer support and all that stuff that we just didn't see in the run up to season 2, go to Max's app while this is running, and you have to like go to the third window over. You have to skip in Joanna for Chip and whoever that family is, ironically located like an hour north of me in Waco. But like you have to skip through all of these reality TV shows that like HBO just isn't. They just have not been that historically. And
well, but that's why it's not HBO Max. It's just Max. You get the max amount of content, you know?
Yeah. It's they feel the exact opposite as Stephen A. Smith, where like they just want more Max, and Stephen A. Smith wanted way less Max on his show.
It's like, and Winning Time did not get another Max contract.
Yeah. So, but I think like you're talking about, there were things beyond this show's control that led to its ending, and yet I still kind of think they made some choices here, some of which came about by, I think, their original like audacity in planning out the show really showed itself in that it starts with Magic Johnson's HIV announcement, right? The very first scene that we see is, and so like you're saying, all right, this is going to take us all the way up to there. And the first season is literally the first season, and that's it. And you're thinking, so it's going to take like 10 years to get to that moment. And I can understand why they did it. It was certainly built out in a way that you would think there would be plenty of support for. The cast is incredible. The production was incredible. They spent a lot of money to make it look and sound the way that it did. And
it really was just visually unbelievable show in terms of the different. I know some people didn't like the different cameras, whatever. I felt like that sort of kept me more in it. I just thought it was really visually interesting the way that they shifted back and forth, like between different camera types and like different lenses and all the different sort of like stuff that went into it.
At one point, I think, when it first came out, my dad like called me. He goes, "Hey, I'm watching this new HBO show, and I can't tell if my TV is broken." And I'm like, "Dad, I think that's a show. I think it's designed that way. I think it's
just give it 5 more minutes. You'll see it'll shift to a different camera." Yeah.
My dad's like, "I lived through the pre-HD age. I don't want to go back." Like, but yeah, I again, there's a lot to like about it, and I really did like. And this is just kind of who I am. I like the lampooning of public figures.
Agreed.
I really like.
They get to be millionaires. We get to laugh and make fun of them as caricatures. That's what we get. Okay,
There's nothing I hate more in terms of content that is being produced right now than these stupid documentaries. Heavy air quotes for those who aren't watching. But heavy air quotes on documentaries that are produced by the subject that are just commercials. They aren't interesting. They aren't like anytime they get anywhere near something that would be touch on some stuff that I want to hear about.
They can make their Last Dance now, and all these content companies are like, "Yeah, we'll pay for your exclusive document." I saw someone, I think it was Alex Rodriguez, gave a statement the other day where they're like, "We're not going to address the allegations that you're making, but Alex will address them in his upcoming documentary."
Yeah, great. Can't wait, A-Rod. Yeah, and so. I really liked that it was such a diversion from the content that is being produced right now in season 1 to make Jerry West look like a complete and utter ridiculous asshole. I can totally understand why Jerry would take issue with it. I can totally understand why various subjects would take issue with however they were being shown. But part of why those subjects took issue with how they were shown is because they probably regret a lot of their behavior from earlier on in their life.
Okay, so that's exactly what I was going to say was, Anthony, how many times have you watched like a home video of yourself as a child or, whatever, it's like, or as a teenager and you think you're so cool and all the, your hair, you're like whatever you're doing on camera, like you think it's the coolest thing in the world and you're just like showing off. And then like 10 years later, you're looking at it and you're like, oh my God, this is like, my skin is crawling. I cannot I'm cringing so hard at this person that I was. And I think that there is an aspect of that to seeing yourself himself played, on television. I'm not going to say, I didn't know young Jerry West. That was well before my time or whatever. But if you read the books, how he is characterized in the show is not that far off. And this is a book that had been out for like 10 to 15 years. No one had
Nobody had a problem
about
with
the characterization. Yeah. People, I have not read Jerry West's autobiography. It's actually on my list because I've heard it's one of the best athlete autobiographies. But Jeff Pearlman was even talking about, he's like, hey, like go read Jerry West's autobiography. Like he talks about, he said in
his own anger
season
issues.
1, he's like, I'm not going to, he's like, I would never snap a golf club. And in his autobiography, he talks about how he got so angry once that he snapped a golf club. Like, it's just, and honestly, it's like, I can get how that would be hard to watch of yourself on screen, but he was like everyone's favorite character. Everybody loves fake angry Jerry West, or real angry Jerry West, Yeah.
the thing there, the reason people liked that Jerry West was because you saw growth. And that honestly, I thought was kind of lacking in every other character that wasn't Pat Riley in season 2, was how like in season 1, you saw Jerry West, you're introduced with him throwing an MVP trophy through a wall or through a glass wall, right? And like
I think it was technically through a window, but in my mind, I see it as a wall. Like he threw it through a cement wall. Like that's how angry he was.
It was one of those big windows that like operate as a wall.
No, it definitely was a window, but in my mind, it's it's a full plaster wall. He just chucked that thing through.
And eventually you arrive, and actually, if you want to like continue that process of growth, right, interpersonal growth, the last scene, or one of the last scenes that we see of Jerry West, is him talking to Magic Johnson about all the times he lost to Bill Russell and why that was, and what made Bill Russell so special, and what made him the winner that he was. And West struggled to win in those spots because of his approach to the sport, right? That type of growth where, like, if you would have told somebody who just was introduced to a trophy hurling maniac that eventually he would offer up some supremely mature wisdom to the central figure in this Magic Johnson, you'd be like, all right, show me how that takes place, right? And actually,
it like was that's also just of that scene, incredibly cool moment to watch, like a Lakers legend passing the torch to the other one, like giving them some, career life advice, whatever. I thought that was really cool.
It was chills. It was great.
Yeah,
it was awesome. Like I said, there's a lot to like in the second season. There really, really was. Like that one like stretch where Lakers and Celtics are essentially passing the ball to each other throughout those playoffs, right? That eventually, incredible stuff. It was really cool. It was very like sports movie-ish that like really got me going. But
the Rambus clothesline scene made my wife actually want to fight Kevin McHale, who she was previously not aware of existing prior to this show. She's like, "Who is that? What he did? He just did that." And I'm like, "No, he was also like a really like he's like one of the scoring leaders all time. But like you know, he's in the top 50 somewhere. I don't know exactly where he ended up, but he was really
he's a
talented
top 75 player."
Yeah.
So,
really talented player, but yeah, she knows him as, the Frankenstein goon that attacked valiant Kurt Rambis,
Yeah. Well, and look, both of those things are true. He was the fucking goon who attacked. Yeah. So there was that aspect of it that that growth that we saw from Jerry West that I just kind of thought, all right, if you are going to lean as heavily as they did on the Magic Johnson Cookie relationship,
let's talk about that.
Show me like where Magic's starting point is, because like if I was just to watch the second season of that show, I would think that he like caught HIV by sitting on a toilet or something. Like it was just there was no. Magic Johnson is one of the most promiscuous athletes of all time. One of the, and I'm not going to quote it directly.
Episode.
Yeah, right, with his cast. That was it, though. And but still, like during that portion of his life, especially after he recovered, right, from the injury, he had a giant mansion in LA where he would throw these giant parties that were filled to the brim with beautiful women. And he would like, not only would he, happily participate in the goings on at those parties, he would make sure that other people at those parties were also participating and making sure that everybody was was kind of pairing up by the end of that party and enjoying themselves. And I'm not judging. Like, that's what 20-something-year-old athletes do, especially at the very top of the LA atmosphere, where it's like you have the world. The world is your oyster. You're not going to be sitting there dialing long distance to your girlfriend back in Michigan. Like, that's not who Magic Johnson was.
Or you're doing both, because there is to some degree he was still in contact with Cookie and all of this stuff. I think that the mistake, if you're going to criticize anything that the show did in season 2, like narratively, to me I think that was probably the biggest misstep, was like treating this like it's this love story at the heart of the show. It just felt like wasted time almost every single episode, where there were a lot more interesting storylines going on. And I just think that like trying to treat that as the emotional crux of the show, when we know how his life ends up, and like maybe you're just setting up the betrayal for season 3 of like, oh, like when he gets HIV, like how we're supposed to care more about this relationship, and it's supposed to feel more like,
well, eventually
he's backsliding and it's a backstab.
They don't get married after that first engagement. Like they so the last thing that we see from him and Cookie is them in the hallway where they're taking these pictures together. Like the second before they took those pictures together that the media was snapping, he was about to tell Cookie that no, we can't get married. It was a distraction, according to Magic Johnson, and he wanted to focus on basketball. He didn't think it was fair to Cookie that he would be as focused on basketball as he was going to, and he didn't think he was going to be the best fiance that he could have been, and they didn't get married in 1984. And that scene that like sums everything up would make one think that they did, but they didn't. That's not how it went. They didn't get married. They were on their honeymoon when Magic Johnson was called back from France to LA by doctors to tell him, actually, you have HIV. It was this like, it's actually...
No, he found out they were in the preseason.
Yeah, it was, they played some preseason games in France that he and Cookie essentially treated as their honeymoon.
Oh, okay. I misremembered that part. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
and I only know this because I literally just read the book.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's been a couple of years for me.
But yeah, it's legitimately, it's obviously sad no matter what way you look at it. But from the perspective of their relationship, it's borderline Shakespearean, right? It's Shakespearean tragic, where he finally commits fully to this woman who absolutely deserved that commitment. And then, his old lifestyle comes back to bite him, Yeah. And actually, in reading the book, Jeff Pearlman does an incredible job of laying all these through lines out, so Shakespearean, where all of these people have this like central character mishap, right? A characteristic, a character flaw that just consistently comes back to bite them. And, with Pat Riley, it was this paranoia that he wasn't getting enough credit and just like this desperate desire to never, ever lose,
to push
ever
everyone
again.
at all times. Yeah.
Yeah. And how that role, or how it played a role in the end of Showtime. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was this aloof guy, and like understandably aloof given some of the issues that he dealt with being a young black man growing up in New York the way that he did. And how it played a role in the league kind of rolling its eyes at his farewell tour. Magic Johnson, obviously, his promiscuity was his character flaw, and it essentially slammed the door shut on Showtime in its entirety with his HIV announcement. So, like, I just thought that like the book sets it up so well with those through lines there. And I thought that like if you're going to do this, you could focus on those few central characters and those few central through lines and really, take your time to let those things develop. But we had like time jumps, and I thought we spent way too much time with other characters that we didn't necessarily need to spend time with. It was just, I think what wound up happening with the second season is I think the Lakers played a more active role in like kind of the access given to the show. And I think that kind of cleaned up some of the image stuff that we saw in the first season. We didn't see as much lampooning in the second. And I also think that the showrunners saw that their runway was running out, and they tried to tell a more complete, longer. They were going to cover a lot more time because they weren't going to get the time to actually cover that stuff with a longer running show. And I thought that it messed with the pacing of the show. And I just thought that it wasn't as good a show in the second season. And it's a bummer that it ended the way it did. And it's a bummer that it looked like it was going to end looking from the inside looking out. It's a bummer that, like Jeff Pearlman said right from the get-go, right? We need more eyes on this. So this is going to end. We need more eyes on this, or this is going to end. So everybody felt it, and I thought that we the audience felt it in the second season's retelling of the events.
Yeah, no, I mean it's hard to argue with that. Like, I do think that the time jumps, I understand why they sort of they jumped as often as they did, because it was just to get around to like more interesting plot beats and whatever. But I think that if they were going to jump that much, like, it would have been nice if they would have had 10 episodes like the first season did, like to space it out a little bit more, give us a little bit more time in some of these areas. And so that it doesn't feel like every single, like magic cookie screen, scene is sort of dragging down like these more sort of interesting plot line, Succession-esque, plot lines of, Bus trying to keep the team up together by by the skin of his teeth, and Kareem's disputes with management, and all
everybody
of these sort of more everybody I also if you're gonna put your conspiracy hat on for a second, like, I don't know if it was necessarily like the Lakers or whoever were more involved with this season directly or anything, but you mentioned the email that you got at the top of the show. I saw this on Twitter as we were getting set to record, that the NBA is going to see some of its games stream live on Max this season as Warner Brothers Discover announces a sports add-on. Wow. I wonder, that's weird how that came out right after Winning Time got canceled.
Yeah. Yeah. And right after Winning Time's tone shifted as drastically as it did about some of the most important figures in NBA history. Super weird.
And I think that the ending is really sad, just in the sense of like, it's a show called Winning. I can't get over this. It's a show called Winning Time. It's supposed to be about the Lakers' dominance of the 1980s, and they end on a shot, basically on a shot of Magic Johnson looking sad in the shower after losing to the Celtics. And that was where this season was supposed to end. I'm not sure how many people are aware of this, but Jacob wrote about it at Silver Screen and Roll because we couldn't believe it, and we waited until the embargo was lifted and whatever. But it was like, when he watched the original screener of the finale, that's where the episode ended, was on Magic sad in the shower. And it was only within the last week that they uploaded the finale again, and it had that kind of like scene with Jeannie and Dr. Buss sort of talking about possible ownership ambitions.
And no critics had seen that.
I'm guessing that was either a deleted scene from some other point that they just hadn't had the opportunity to use, or that they were like, hey, this is going to be over, let's get these two back in here and we can just film it with two people and sort of give a little bit more of a bow on it. But for it to end with like a montage of like, hey, we know you just saw these guys lose, but here's how much winning they went on to do, is just like, I don't know, it was just really, it was sad to see how that all happened.
Like that scene with Dr. Buss and with Jeannie, right? Like again, there were moments where it was so detached from reality that I laughed. I laughed out loud at some of this stuff. And that is supposed to be this super touching moment where Dr. Buss promises, one day, Jeannie, one day you're going to rule it all. And it's like, well, your first choice was Jim. We just didn't touch that, right? Like,
it's like this show was very much written with the future already in place. Where like Jeff wrote his book, I believe, before or it was like right as she got rid of Jim, or like or right before, or it was like that had not all like necessarily played out yet, and the whole succession aspect of it. And this show is written with in mind. It's like, nope, like Jeannie was sort of the heir, like all from it was clear to anyone paying attention that Jeannie was the one that was going to go on and run things and whatever. And it's like, that wasn't really how things played out. Like,
no,
no.
Like. And, that's where it's kind of a bummer because, look, man.
That was the other thing that I didn't get about her hating season 1 was like, you're the hero. You're the one that you're the hero of this story. You're the protagonist.
Yeah. And well, although Jeannie was not as vocal in her dislike for the show. She did say that, like, if you want the true retelling of it.
Yeah, she just kept saying that if you want the true retelling, watch this documentary that we made.
She wasn't nearly as vocal as, like, Jerry and Magic.
She did say, like, hey, I liked how they portrayed my dad, I guess. Yeah. It was, like, sort of her early, thing.
But, like, look, man, Dr. Buss was a womanizer. Like, him being behind the times as it pertains to a woman being in charge of this thing that he loved, like, that wouldn't shock me. Like that wouldn't shock anybody if and them throwing to him being like, Gene Bean, you're going to take this over, kiddo. And I'm like, yeah, but like that took a few steps.
It wasn't, believe it or not, it was not right after the 1984 finals. I don't think that would be my guess.
Probably not. No. All right. I
based on his decisions for like the next 30-ish years or so.
Yeah. And by the way, a really interesting version of the show would have been Succession-esque, where we see more of Jim and we see more of Johnny and we see more of.
I was very disappointed that we didn't get to watch Jim's arc as going from like an Afro guy that didn't know what he was doing to a baseball cap guy that didn't know what he was doing. I think like that was. I was excited for that.
I want to be absolutely clear. I did really enjoy the show. The Laker fan in me, like getting to like live out some of these moments, in that way, was really cool. Seeing as like I was born with, holding a Laker plastic spoon, like this is the stuff that my dad would bounce me on his knee and tell me about all of these stories.
How you're going to run the Lakers one day?
Once my brothers fuck up one too many times, it's my time to shine, baby.
Which is funny because you are the oldest brother, for those not aware. So he still was like, these two, they're going to have to mess it up for me to put you in charge. But still, it's possible.
But yeah, I loved like living through all of that stuff and getting to experience it even in this way was super fun. And I am always going to hold a show like this to a super high standard because of how I am with the Lakers and also because of what we saw in the first season. There were very few seasons of TV that I have enjoyed more than season 1 of this series. Like it's in the pantheon of all time.
Honestly, if you're thinking about like if you never watched this and you're like, why are these guys so upset? Like just even if you're like, I don't want to watch season 2 based on how they just told me it ended, just go watch season 1. Winning
season
time. It ends
incredible.
with a win. They win the championship that year. It's perfect.
Yeah. And maybe. I know Adam McKay has a relationship with Netflix. He's done a movie for them in the past. Maybe they figure out a way to revive the show there so that we get at least a show called Winning Time ending with some winning.
HBO, we need it on Showtime so that they can call it Showtime.
so we can call it Showtime. Well, the thing is, HBO has a relationship with Netflix. Some of HBO shows have made their way over to Netflix, so maybe that can also
selling off all its content for parts, which is the biggest reason why this got canceled is because they're cutting all costs at all costs.
Yeah. So
what they don't have to pay like any production rights or whatever around streaming a TNT game on their app. Like
yeah. No, look what Zaslav is doing to that channel and everything is brutal. It's not even HBO. It does have
My Cat from Hell on there though, which I've started watching, which is like a very I don't know if it's
just a live stream of your house. Is it like
it is? There are some moments that stand out, and I'm like, oh, maybe I need Jackson Galaxy's help. But I don't think it's intended as a comedy, but like the first 5 minutes of every episode are just people getting lit up by their cats, and I can't stop laughing. Like I probably shouldn't, but it's.
Your cat's just sitting there taking notes, scratching stuff out. Like, oh, that's a good one. All right.
Yeah.
All right. I want to talk about Jared Vanderbilt really quick, and then we have a misfortune of the week that I can share. So, Jared Vanderbilt gets his 4-year, $48 million extension. He was going to be paid, or is still going to be paid, like $4.5 million this upcoming season, and then next year it'll kick in. Where this impacts the Lakers this season is that he cannot be traded. He has to be with the Lakers for 6 months following that extension, which will take them past the trade deadline.
So you know what that means? That the Mavs are going to look into the feasibility of trading for him at some point this season.
Yeah, Mark Cuban specifically will. Yeah.
No, it's not. No, it's not going to be Mark Cuban. It's going to be Nico Harrison and the Gia and Kyrie, and they're going to be like, all right, well, let's look into the feasibility of adding, this non-trade eligible Lakers player in the middle of the season. It's a tradition. They did it with LeBron last year. This year, Vando.
I like Vando the player, right?
Yeah.
Especially more in the regular season than in the postseason. I think he's one of those really important 82-game players that will keep the Lakers win total higher than it was without him. I think that him making $12 million a year, even if he doesn't improve, maybe a slight overpay, but it sounds about right. He's a very good and versatile defender, and is only 24 years old, and I would imagine will improve somewhat. And also accepts his role, which is kind of rare for a young player who is still looking to get paid. So, Jared Vanderbilt, a player, especially at this number, perfectly fine for me. I'm not thrilled about them not being able to trade him this year because they already, because of the way that they approached this offseason, did kind of limit themselves with what they can do to improve in this upcoming season. So that I think is a bit of a ding to the approach here. I also don't necessarily know if they play this season out, if Jared Vanderbilt at $12 million just wouldn't have been there. I don't think he would have gotten significantly more on the open market. I can understand why they want to tie some pieces down. And look, on the positive side of this thing, I am really happy that the Lakers have gotten sick of that rotating cast of veteran minimum role players who minimums. Were never going to care about the Lakers beyond the season that they were on the team. In this case, you have Reeves, you have now Vando, you have Rui. You have, in theory, D'Angelo Russell. You have a bunch of.
I think D'Lo's putting down roots. He's probably bought a house by now. He seems.
Well, if he has, it's
really locked in for that player option next year. It's
look. Given the amount of money that he makes, there's no such thing as a bad real estate investment.
Yeah, true.
In LA, he could buy that house and hold on to it, and his kids will be happy for him doing so. But yeah, I think. I think there's positives and negatives to this. How did you take the Vanderbilt extension rules?
I agree with most of what you just said, that it's probably a slight overpay based on what we just watched in the playoffs, or at least what we watched, especially in that final series against Denver. I think I felt like he helped the Lakers win at least one game in the Golden State series with his defense on Steph. And I also thought that he was legitimately really impactful in the Grizzlies series as well, especially before Ja got hurt. And so, I think he's a little better than an 82-game player, but I also get why people are sort of pigeonholing him. Without the three ball, it certainly gets a lot harder to play him in the playoffs. And
rim finishing. He's not a great finisher.
Yeah, no. And it's certainly, so yeah, all of that stuff makes it more difficult to play him in the postseason when there's matchup hunting, all that. One of the things that I haven't seen discussed a lot, though, that I do like about this extension, and that actually one of our Silver Screen Roll commenters got mad at me for even saying, they're like, this is just you coming up with a reason to say that it's good. There's no good reason so you said this, but I like that they sort of approach this like they did with the Kuz extension a couple years ago, where it's like, look, we're going to extend you right now to probably what would be more than your market value right now, but it's so that you don't feel like you have to play for your contract all year. You can go into the season, and if you're not starting, it's not a big deal because you're locked up under or it's not as big of a deal as it would be if you were not under a 4-year deal where you feel like you're getting screwed over because you're trying to earn your kind of generational payday, because he has not been making, by NBA standards, as a second round pick, very much money. He's going to make more money basically in the first year of this extension, or as much money as he's made, in his entire career thus far, including this upcoming year. And so, I think that it makes a lot of sense just from sort of like a team building perspective and a locker room perspective to just be like, hey, you're locked in. You don't have to go out there and like battle for this role or for, like these minutes that you feel like you need to get in order to get paid. We're already paying you. It's a nice deal. You get to stay in LA, which it seems like by all accounts you seem to like. And if you continue to get better, then maybe this thing, ages into a value contract.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's the part of it that, is worth really hammering home here is that if he does take any steps forward offensively, this becomes a value contract.
Which is possible he doesn't. A lot of guys just don't learn how to shoot. It's entirely possible that he does not improve all that much as an offensive player over the course of his career.
Well, one thing I've really found
interesting... It's
probably
more likely than not, if we're being real.
Yeah.
But there is the chance that, he seems to be a hard worker, that, he puts in enough work, that he gets good enough at that stuff, that all of a sudden this is a value deal.
I'm going to be completely honest. He doesn't have a shot that I am very optimistic about. Like his shot form
it doesn't even look like he's confident while he's shooting it.
No, he's left-handed.
There's very
but,
oh shit, the ball found
right
me
side
energy.
Of his,
it's like
yeah,
it's like if you get called on in class and you didn't mean to have your hand up, you were just stretching. Like
yeah, yeah. You didn't read the book.
Yeah,
I read the inside cover.
That's actually LeBron in most of the book club meetings.
Stop. He reads the first page. Like he's very good with the first page. Page 2, we'll see.
Hey, he's a literary critic, okay? He reads the first page and he can decide whether or not he's going to finish that book. Like just off vibes of the first page.
Also not the most detail oriented as it pertains to lyrics either. Like he's very good at like the mumble through like
yabba dabba doo Scooby Doo baby. Like
He's also really good at like when he's live streaming himself enjoying music, like making up for not knowing the words with enthusiasm, where he just like starts rocking his head. It's just like whoa.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I agree with you. I would be pretty surprised if Vanderbilt like became a 36 and up % 3-point shooter. And if he does, it wouldn't be at the kind of volume where it really matters. One thing I have been kind of surprised by, and pleasantly surprised in his approach to the offseason, and you never know with these things, but the videos that I've seen, he's spending as much time working on catching and quickly going up near the basket, whether it's finishing at the rim, a floater, off of the glass, whatever. But like because one thing that would happen pretty often last year is he would like catch the ball and like you're talking about, it's one thing to do that at the 3-point line where he could pause all he wants and he's still going to be open. But when you pause and you're near the rim, defense rotates back over and that advantage is gone. If he becomes more fluid there, that's where I think you might see some steps forward for him offensively. And if he does take those steps forward and he just becomes merely playable offensively, that's where he becomes a legitimately important, especially given the types of players the Lakers don't really have. They don't have very versatile offensive or defensive players on the perimeter. Yeah. Something that he is particularly good with, right? He can go out and he can respectively guard you a Devin Booker or Michael Porter
Brandon
Jr.
Ingram.
Like those kinds of bigger players that are going to give Austin Reeves problems, are going to give basically the Lakers problems, and do give everybody problems. But he at least gives you an answer there. And if he plays decently offensively and stays on the court, then $12 million is a bargain. And I'm fine with that.
The Lakers have more shooters this year to sort of, or at least theoretically, like if Gabe Vincent's shooting continues and, D'Lo continues to shoot like regular season D'Lo, all that, the Taurean Prince, like the Lakers have guys that can sort of space, Christian Wood especially, like the Lakers have guys that can space the floor and give him a little bit more windows finishing around the rim, where maybe he does start to feel a little more confident going up. He's not hearing footsteps because he's playing in sort of the clogged paint as often.
Yeah. One really important factor here is going to be his free throws. We see this a lot with Giannis, where the best games that Giannis plays are the ones where he's like 9 of 10 at the free throw line. Because it allows him to like, he's not worried about going to the free throw line. It's those games where he like airballs a free throw early in the game and you can tell late in it, he doesn't really want to get fouled. He doesn't really want to go to the free throw line.
Time to put those Hakeem workouts to get my money's worth out of those. It's dream shake time, baby.
Yeah, and that's where you start to see a lot more of like pull up in the mid range and taking 3-point shots that he wouldn't normally take in those spots. And I think for Vanderbilt, if he is confident and capable at the free throw line, it will stop some of the hesitation that he shows at the rim and around the rim. And again, you don't need him to be, you don't need him to shoot like Kuz or anything like that. Like, he's a better defensive player than Kuz. So like, you can just kind of make up for it. But he is going to have to take steps forward. And if he does, that contract becomes a bargain. If not, it's an okay price. And
the cap's going up, and I know that this is like, to listeners, this is the most boring thing in the world that every NBA podcaster says, and like, I totally get you. The cap going up, it's not going to go up indefinitely, and I understand like there's still sticker shock and all of this stuff at some of these extension numbers, but legitimately, as the cap rises,
it's going to be a mid-level exception.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The one question I do have about this, and now part of this is because of just who I am and how unorganized I can be. But I kind of previewed out the rotation. I previewed out each position, and I neglected to mention Jared Vanderbilt. Like, I just didn't bring him up. And
you mean on the re-preview series that you haven't done?
Yeah, sorry, Matt Damon. I promise I'm going to get to you at some point. But But I did, like, once the Lakers finally signed Christian Wood, I looked at their roster and I went like guards, wings, and bigs is essentially how I looked at it. And I just like didn't mention Jared Vanderbilt. And obviously more of it is a blunder on my part.
You're a hater, and he's your William Gabriel. Like, we all, everyone on this feed has one Laker that they hate irrationally. And for you, it's Vando.
I'd have to think about it. I guess he'd have to be up there, but like, I didn't mention him, and
I just can't believe Aaron said his new one is Austin Reeves. Like, I thought that was a bold take at his barbecue, but hey, I'm sure you can explain that on the show this week.
I don't think he's allowed to be under the employ of the Lakers and have that stance. Like, I don't think anybody is allowed to dislike.
No, somebody's got to keep Austin humble. I respect it. He's not going to let all this hype go to Austin's head.
Yeah.
I actually heard he's been showing up to every workout Austin's doing, and he's like, you're going to skip leg day again? How are you going to guard in the post?
He's just screaming out. Who did they lose to? They lost to Germany, and they lost to another team that
Canada.
Put him in the post. They lost 3 of their last 4 games.
Lithuania.
Yeah. He's just showing up. Lithuania.
Yeah, Aaron's learned all the fight songs.
Yeah. With Vanderbilt, I try to be somewhat self-aware here, and I understand my tendencies. And that said, with this, not mentioning Vanderbilt, A, it was a blunder. B, though, it made me think,
it's like, a Freudian slip.
Is it because there just isn't much room for him in the rotation? And I legitimately don't know. His skill set is important, and there isn't much low overlap with that defensive skill set. But and because of that, and Darvin Ham like really cares about defense, so I think he's going to give Vanderbilt a real chance. But like, where does he fit in? They have a bunch of wings. Is he going to play the 2? Like, he's going to be a non-shooting shooting guard essentially. Like,
no, he's going to be the 3 or 4, I think.
Right, but like, if he is, he's cutting into Rui's minutes. I guess technically you could have him beating out Taurean Prince for some minutes. Nobody thinks that Cam Reddish is going to get any minutes, so I'm not really worried there. But like, if AD is playing,
does Cam Reddish realize that? I guess we'll find out on Media Day.
Yeah. If AD is going to be playing less center and he's going to be sliding up a spot, that might push LeBron into some wing minutes, and that cuts into where Vanderbilt could be playing. So like, is this a spot where I'm watching the sky fall without it actually falling, or do you think, how confident are you that he's going to have a spot in that rotation?
I'm pretty confident because I think Ham values defense, and Jared Vanderbilt is like, I mean, he's got to be the second best defender on this team. I mean, he's not the first because that's AD, but I'm
No,
trying to think. Like,
he's the second. Yeah,
yeah,
I would agree.
I think so. And so, he's going to get minutes just based off of that. I think this may be sort of a more non-traditional roster in terms of positionality. Like, you have LeBron, you have Austin who can do some ball handling, guys that can bring that aren't necessarily point guards. Like, maybe you have some sort of jumbo-sized lineups as a result of that, where Jared Vanderbilt is sort of playing one position on offense and guarding another one on defense. Like,
yeah, that's what it would have to be. Because the whole reason he would be there is to match up
playing
with somebody
offensively 4 and defensively he's like a 2 or a 1 at times,
or even center. In some lineups, he would be at the dunker spot. But I think you're right in Darvin looking for ways to play him, especially early in the season. But I do kind of think if he doesn't take steps forward offensively. Like this Lakers team,
he's going to end up, I think, probably the 8th, 9th, 10th man, like somewhere in that range. He's not going to be above that.
Yeah, well, and if so, $12 million for 8th, 9th, or 10th guy is a slight overpay, which is the point I was making in the first place.
Yeah,
that I think a lot of people took issue with. But I that is kind of the spot that they're going to be in. And look, like the thing with this Lakers team. I saw somebody call them the deepest team in the NBA. I saw some,
was it
conversation.
You on a podcast in 2021?
No, that was the most talented team of my lifetime.
My bad.
Which I stand by. God dang it.
I mean, it's better than Rob Pelinka's. This is the most talent ever assembled in one room about the 2022 Lakers.
I would disagree with pretty vehemently. But yeah, I think. With this team being as deep as it is and as versatile as it is, like Darvin is going to have a lot of toys to play with, and that is the point of an 82 game season, is really just kind of like trying out as many combinations as you can and figuring out which pitches that you can really throw in high leverage spots come playoff time, and I think Vanderbilt is going to probably do pretty well for himself in the regular season. And hopefully over the course of those 82 games, we see enough progress to not be as concerned as we were, especially towards the end of each series, where I thought he always played a pretty important role early.
Yeah,
and then it just kind of like slid away a little bit. If he can be a little bit more consistent, play a more consistent role there, then $12 million is great value for that kind of player.
And I will say, just as one last thing, that, if you're going to overpay a type of player, overpaying a wing size guy is probably the best way you can go with, especially like a role player. If it's a wing that you think can have utility in the regular season and maybe in the playoffs, it's hard for that to end up being too much of an overpay. Versus like overpaying like your backup scoring guard that you kind of like,
That felt like a checkpoint from you there. Because what show you're on. I'm not going to disagree about any complimentary point about a wing.
I'm just saying, Rob finally listened to you. Aaron forwarded all your emails finally, and
Yeah. No, I'm happy to be of help, Rob, in any way.
See, he's sitting there. Rob, like a Rob frequent listener of this show, is sitting there, and he's like, "This guy's going to criticize me for not signing enough wings, and then he's going to criticize me for overpaying one."
It would be great if I got that email. Like my
Goldilocks Anthony Irwin over here, just like
the Lakers emailed me personally about signing him, and then Rob.
The Lakers emailed me personally. It said, "From the desk of Rob Pelinka, tell Anthony to shut the F up and focus on his own team."
All right, let's wrap up here with a misfortune of the week. I have one. I don't know if you have one, but
I do have one. It's Winning Time getting canceled. I was really looking forward to seeing more fake Jerry West. My favorite TV character in a long time is just Jerry West in the background of scenes, like screaming and cursing like a lunatic as like people are like discussing like basketball moves.
Yeah. It does really suck that Red Auerbach is looking up at us from where he is right now and smiling at the end of that season. It's a real bummer that like.
I will say the guys who portrayed the Celtics did a great job because I wanted to fight them. You know, like it was like all credit to the actors.
Yeah,
especially the guy who played Larry Bird. Like,
yeah, I can't believe that actor was able to nail his shooting form the way that he did. That's crazy.
He was incredible.
That was wild. Like that,
I would really like to see him and the guy who played Magic, Quincy Isaiah, Solomon Hughes, the guy who played Kareem. Like I think they all deserve more shots at TV series and movie roles or whatever they're pursuing, because I thought all of them did incredible jobs with these like iconic characters. And anyway, sorry, that's a whole but yes, my misfortune of the week is that we do not get to see it on Max, which I will be canceling because of
no you can't
time. Yeah, I can't.
You can't. You can't cancel it.
Who's gonna stop me?
The Lakers are going to be playing on there.
Yeah, no, believe it or not, I have other means to get the Lakers.
I guess that's true. Illegal streaming it is.
Yeah. Wait, no, I'm not admitting to that on the air.
All right, my misfortune of the week. I just got back from vacation, and I have like legitimately been
end of misfortune.
Yeah,
you went back to you got back from vacation.
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. Is my misfortune. I have legitimately been trying to get healthier. Like, you have kids, and you see enough of these movies, especially Disney, where like a parent is always dead. Like, there's always missing one of them, and I'm like looking at it. And it forces you to think about your own mortality and how sad it is that these characters have to like deal with and grow from the death of their parents or whatever. So like I'm like trying to get healthier. I'm drinking a lot less, and I'm eating a lot healthier.
Believe it or not, I don't think it was Bambi's mom's drinking that led to what happened to her. Or maybe she was so drunk she wandered into the road.
Yeah, she wandered into a bullet. Like, she saw one coming.
Oh yeah, that's right. Bambi's mom gets shot, not hit by a car. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Although we haven't seen how the live action Bambi is going to go. We don't know how they're going to get her there. I've been trying to take better care of myself, and I've been drinking, one of the things that is super important that like we somehow manage to overlook a lot is like drinking water, right? Drink lots and lots and lots of water and
not me.
Yeah. Well, for like a surprising chunk of my life, I ignored that advice. It was just, it was not something I drank very much of. And, water, like part of the reason I didn't drink, one of the reasons that I didn't drink very much water is it's really bland. It's water. There's no taste. It's just is. And, so initially I would squeeze a little lemon into my water, and that would kind of convince me it also like helped me track how much water I was drinking, because you could see the number of like lemons that were squeezed into waters. And I would say, okay, if I had 4 of those, that would mean 4 of these like 35 or 40 ounce Yeti things. And that's a good amount of water. And I have to track all of these things. It's just the way that my brain works. I also like, so eventually my palate got sick of just the lemon. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to try some cucumber. I'm going to throw some cucumber in there. I've heard that it's good for you. I've heard that it's good for your insides and how everything is kind of like running in there. And I started to feel terrible, awful, like cramping, just not a pleasant stretch of my lifetime. And I'm like, babe, there's no way I'm allergic to cucumber. I eat it all the time. I love cucumber. One of my favorite snacks, like from birth to even now, is I love a little bit of cucumber, some lemon, some salt, and some tahini. And it's a lovely, lovely snack. And so I didn't figure I was allergic to it. I was like trying to figure out why I felt so bad. So I literally Googled lemon cucumber water, like side effects. And I'm no. So I Google this, and it turns out that's like one of the most popular system flushes in existence. so like,
you accidentally did a juice cleanse.
I feel. Look, for those of you who are interested in these kinds of things, I feel amazing now. I feel really, really good now. But for like a solid week, I felt awful, and it's because my body by way of all of this cucumber lemon water that I was drinking was just getting rid of all of the toxins, and I had a lot of demons to get out of my system. So that's that like week or so of my life, and I'm not even kidding. It was a good week that I felt like crap. was an accidental juice cleanse that I put myself through.
I thought that you were going to say that like either the cucumber had went bad or you had like picked like the wrong vegetable. Like you were like it was accidentally like zucchini or something, you know? Like
eggplant? No.
Yeah.
No, it's
Jen,
it's
I've
literally
been cutting
that.
up these pickles and putting them into my water every day and it keeps
I just can't believe I've arrived a point in my life where a kind of water can mess with my system. Like I turned 37 in almost exactly a month. And I have reached that stage of washedness where I have to be careful with the water that I drink. Like, what are we doing? Why do people age? Why do I have to go through this?
Well, you know, we see that your son is, you know, putting just nothing but you've learned from this, and you have your son putting nothing but quality ingredients into himself, which is why when I went and got brunch with you guys, he ate a good chunk of the cover of the book that I brought you to read him.
Hey, that counts as reading. Like in my household, that counts as reading.
Yeah, he consumed a book. You know, it's just not in the way most people do.
It was funny. Like we're sitting there at brunch, we're all having this a great time. It was great seeing you twice over the course of my last vacation. Twice I got to see you, and we're all sitting there. And we look over, and his mouth is blue from the book. Oh God.
He really is. I know every single story that we tell about this child makes him sound like baby Paul Bunyan or something, but he really is. He's just like, we're going to hear about, he was like gnawing through the drywall in your house or just casually or, you know.
So he's a bigger 1-year-old, and one of the couples that we watch football with every weekend here, they also have a 1-year-old who is smaller but more active. And like part of the reason Miles is not very active is literally because he's big. And like babies wrestle, like not intentionally or intentionally, whatever it is, they see each other and they just like want to feel all parts of the other baby that they see. And this other baby is so much faster than him that he'll like bounce around, you know, Miles and like poke and prod him and stuff. And Miles got really sick of it one day and just like threw himself on top of this baby. It was incredible. I'm so
telling you, this kid's gonna be 7'2".
All right. Well, that is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge. Probably going to split this up into 2 episodes. Let us know what you think in the comments about winning time in Vanderbilt. Again, continue to subscribe and all of that as we get ready for the season, which is only a couple weeks away before we get to
I think like
training
10
camp
days till media day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like 12 or something. Yeah, not very
right
many.
around the corner. I am going to launch this season preview series at some point here over the course of those 10 days.
All right, sure. We all believe you, Anthony. We all believe it's coming.
Let us send us questions on iTunes as well, so that I can get to over the course of the next couple weeks, while we still have time to do that, because when we get to the season, it's a little harder to do that kind of a thing. So until the next time you guys hear from us, which will probably be Thursday, I'm Anthony Irwin. That is Harrison Fagan. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Cucumber.